Hey everyone, and welcome to a new session with Code with Sally. This session runs every Thursday at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm happy to have you all with me today. And if you're watching the video offline on YouTube, I'm glad you landed to the video and the channel. A quick reminder, we have the YouTube channel Code with Sally. You can subscribe so you get notified with any video we upload. For the English speaking people, you can find like the two main playlists we currently working on was the beginner, and that's one we ended. And currently we are in the intermediate to learn Apex intermediate. And in general, in the playlist, it's best to sort with the oldest first because we usually start with the easiest topic or the basics and then we build on top of it. So if you missed the any of the invocation, Apex invocation, or the asynchronous Apex, I would encourage you to check them out. It's very important topics and you would need at least one of them in any project. So like feel free to scan them. Start with part one always, then part two, then move on because you need the information in the previous part first. Today, if you are joining us for the first time, we are starting kind of a new topic. It's not brand new. It's related to some concepts we explained before, like classes, methods, static methods, Apex invocation in general. So it's building on top of some topics we covered, but it considered new topic will be covered. So we will be talking about the invocable methods, and I want to give you like, as you see, like it's part of the invocation type. And as a quick reminder, like for the invocation types, we started in the beginner series. We were always typing in the developer console, defining a variable, defining a list, trying the methods there, testing for loops. So we were mainly focused on the concepts and the basics, and we were using execute anonymous in developer console. Then towards the end of the beginner series, we discussed together the triggers, the importance of triggers, how to write it, best practices, how to do like one trigger per object, how to put your logic in the trigger handler, how to have your method and pass context variables, how to use the switch case in the trigger. So, and also the unit testing along the way. So those were in the beginner. Part of the intermediate I had in my plan first to finish the synchronous Apex, and that's what this playlist has so far. Like it's explaining all the Apex invocation types, the asynchronous types, from future method to queuable to Apex to schedule Apex as well. So it's very important to understand them, not to memorize the syntax, and understand why we are doing what we are doing. Today, we are moving to the second topic within the Apex invocation intermediate level we have, and it's invocable methods. Invocable methods, it's a very interesting topic. And we'll see together, again, we'll start small. We will start explaining bits and pieces, why and how, and basic syntax. Then we'll see how we can use it in flows. We'll move on to how we can use it on prompt builder and Agentforce actions. We can just pick one example and that's it. But I find it interesting to show you different use cases for it and how to use it. And now Agentforce is like a hot topic and everyone wants to have hands-on on it. So my advice for the flows, there is a good YouTube channel called Yalla Salesforce. I would encourage you to follow the channel as well and to check the videos. Bassem started to have like for English and for Arabic as well, like a specific playlist for flows. So it will help you understand the flows better and it will serve the purpose of the session. For Agentforce, I want to encourage you to check Agentforce now. It's a Salesforce initiative. It's amazing. They have a lot of sessions and they keep adding. It's not always just those. They will keep adding dates and sessions. It will help you understand. And the workshops are usually hands-on. They provide you book to work on in org as well. So it's a mix of someone doing live coding, hearing experts talking, workshops and trying. So it's a great space to learn more about the Agentforce and have some hands-on beside the Trailhead. And it would serve as well to give you some knowledge. What is prompt builder? What is agent topic? What is Agentforce in general? Because at some point during the sessions or when we are talking about invocable methods, we'll start talking about the how to use the invocable methods in prompt builder and Agentforce actions. So get ahead of it. We have one session next week, and then we'll have a pause for summer break, and we'll be back again on the 21st of August. So you have time like to catch up either with flows more. We'll be talking about flows this week and next week, how to use the invocable method there. But the prompt builder Agentforce action will be when we are back in August. So you have plenty of time to be prepared and know more about those concepts or topics. So it's easier for you to follow. And we'll be covering them to a certain extent as well during the session, but the focus will be using the invocable method from them. So that's like an intro. I hope it's an interesting topic, and I would love people to participate, send their questions, suggestions, use cases they want to see, things that they hit issues or difficulties during the work, day-to-day work. I would love to incorporate like your issues and problems and live examples without mentioning business or using things as is, but like to implement something similar and help others like build the experience altogether. So feel free to send any questions anytime. So let's start the amazing topic for today. And let's start like introduction about the invocable method. In this session, we are introducing the invocable methods. You can think about it as a small piece of code. When we say method, like we saw together math utility, like let me go quickly here. Math utility, we tried this when we were working with classes and method, like we did a math utility, one to add numbers, one to divide numbers, one to subtract numbers. So when you hear invocable method, your mind will hear more method, like method. We are doing a method, a specific or special type of method. But again, a method is what? It's a piece of code that we write that we can call from somewhere else, and it can do some logic for us. It can do some calculation. It can do some DML. It can retrieve some records, and the possibilities are endless. Call HTTP request, call an external API as we did before. So the same. Invocable method is not something different. It's still a piece of code that you can invoke and you can call. But it has a special tag and a special syntax. It's a very small difference in syntax and some rules we have to learn together about it. But at the end, the special about this type of methods would be that we can call it from other places from the point and clicks. So it helps admin and developers to work together as one unit to extend the capabilities of the point and click and what the admin can do with some support and some special functions or features or like complex logic that the Apex can handle better. So it's to fill the gap between admin and developers. So in this session, what we want to do is we want to start explaining what's the definition of invocable method, understand it more. We want to show a simple syntax, very basics. Like we won't be even calling this method from anywhere, but we want to see how basic it can be and what are the main like syntax or difference in syntax between regular method and invocable method would be. Then the plan is to see how we can create an invocable method and use it from record trigger flow. That's for today's session. So stay tuned And I will let you know, but towards the end of the session, what portion of invocable methods we'll be covering next time. But as I said, what are the invocable methods? They are Apex code. Again, it's a method, so we write code in it, and we can call it from other tools. Sample of tools would be flows, but it's more than that. They are important because, as we mentioned, like sometimes you can hit limitation with what the point and click can do, and you don't want to go fully 100% customized code in Apex. So it can be a workaround or a middle ground to still keep a lot of your logic in the point and click and flow, and just invoke an invocable method to do something the flow cannot do, or it's hard to maintain it if it's done through the flow, and delegate it to the Apex. And then still the two can work together. So you minimize the customization, but still you overcome the limitation of the system and help admin and developers work together. So if we want to talk like more deep in terms of definition, again, it's a method or it's a function. It's Apex. We are writing Apex code, but it's very special because we will be calling it from external tools. And as we mentioned, again, it's making your code and Apex code available from point and click. But we have to be mindful, and we learn together that because it will be used through different, it can be used through different point and click tools like record trigger flows, screen flows, auto launch flows, Agentforce action, prompt builder. So even though each of them work differently, Salesforce came up with some rules that make it like safe to be called and not limited to one type versus the other. Invocable method can be called from all of those. So we'll be learning together those limitations as well. So let's see here on the screen a sample for it. I have a very basic, like if you look at it and compare it between this and the math utility, you have a class. Here I have a class. So same, no differences. Then I have a public static method that return an integer. It has a name, like I have the method signature. Leave invocable method for now, but like we have same public static, it returns a list of strings. We have a method name for it, and it takes a parameter of list of inputs. So it seems like it's the same kind of methods we are writing and we learn together. That's true. And that's where like it's not complex. People sometimes like feel, oh my God, like we are learning something new. It's called invocable methods. Like it will be hard. I don't want to learn more about it. Like I won't be calling this from flow. I will be doing everything from scratch in a method or a trigger, and I don't use flows at all. That's not true. Again, it's simple, but we have to learn some of the restrictions we have. So the first one is that you need to have a notation to it. Like when we did future methods, we had a specific annotation to use to let Salesforce knows that it's a method that will run in a separate transaction in the future whenever the resources are available, and it's not something that will run synchronously. So the same, Salesforce needs to know that this is a special type of methods, and we are able to use it in points and clicks tools. So using the annotation here at invocable method, it's telling Salesforce, hey, be careful. This method can be invoked from flows, from prompt builder, prompt templates, from other places as well. So, hey, be careful. This is a special type of methods. One of the rules as well is that the method cannot be, it has to be static, and it has to be public or global. Like we cannot have a private method with the invocable methods. It has to be public or global. Also, it has to be in an outer class. What it means in outer class, it means like it's not an inner class or subclass. So let me show you this so it's more clear. Let me open here, invocable method. Okay, so we have here, let's see, I can create a subclass. Subclass means I can say here, public class, subclass, and I can have properties and I can have methods. Let me take this and I will name it, for example, method subclass. So someone can say, okay, I will create a subclass and I will have another invocable method in it. If you try to save now, you'll get an error that static can only be used a method on top level type. And the same, like we cannot, the rule we said like before that invocable methods has to be static. So invocable method must be declared as static, and static methods have to be on the upper level of the class. So we cannot have a subclass with invocable method. So it has to always be on the outer class level that you have in your code. Another thing is that you cannot have more than one invocable method within your class. Like I cannot go say here and say I will have example method 2. Like, and that takes, for example, a list of IDs. So it's a different like signature, different name, but it's still invocable method. We'll get an error saying I can only have one method per type can be defined with invocable method. So you can only have one invocable method in your class. You cannot have more than that. So that's another rule. Like when we did the math utility regular method, we had multiple method in the same class. In case of invocable method, it has to always be one. It can take as well one single parameter, and this single parameter has to be a list of one of like the supported types. Like it can be list of string, can be a list of list, it can be list of wrapper class. You can do whatever you want. And the return type can be a list or it can be a void. Like it cannot, it can return nothing. So let's try here. I can, if I try here, add another list, for example, and try to save, it will tell you like only one parameter is supported for invocable methods. So Salesforce is enforcing that for you. Also, like, let's say I would say here, I pass this as a string, not a list of string. It should tell you also as well an error that valid invocable parameters must be a list of one of the supported types. And we'll learn together in today's session why we need a list, why Salesforce is enforcing a list. And here as well, like you cannot return a string. It has to be either void or invocable method does not support return type of string. So it has to be a list or void. So that's very important. Again, very important thing to understand, and we'll try our best today to explain it and make it clear. We want to learn why it's very important to have, or why Salesforce is enforcing that you pass a list to it. When we would need to use invocable method, again, it's something like you have to keep in mind when you hit the limit with any of the points and clicks, like as flows. Can you extend it and like complement it with an invocable method, or you have to start from scratch, something very custom? So it helps. It's very important, and we have to always think about it because it bridges the gap between the two. There is a question if we can have multiple parameters as input. The answer is no, it takes only one parameter. So here, if I put the list of string as list 2, it will complain that we can only pass one parameter to the invocable method. So it cannot accept more than one input. It's exactly one input parameter. And you'll find these rules as well here in Salesforce documentation. So for the input, there can be at most one input parameter. So you cannot have more. And it has to be one of the accepted parameters, list of primitive data type or list of S object, like list of account, generic S object. We learned together about it. User defined type like a class, like list of a wrapper class, you can. So you'll find this also written in the documentation as of today, what's allowed or what's not allowed. Next, like we want to know from where we can invoke them. And that's very, very interesting. The flow is the most common. People think about it mainly when we learn about the invocable method. And that's how we'll start together. We'll start with record trigger flow. We'll try screen flow next time. And that's the most common use. But with AI and Agentforce, I think we'll find this coming more like as well common use case when people start using prompt template. You can call an Apex, an invocable method Apex in the prompt template. Same for the Agentforce action. When you define an action, you can define an action to execute an Apex. An Apex should be an invocable method, and the same rules will apply whether it's called from a flow, prompt template, or Agentforce action. So it's all that. Something myself, it was new for me. I was reading the documentation here and I found REST. So we learn together how we can, and I didn't know about this before the session, to be honest. And that's the beauty of learning while we are learning all together. We can call an invocable method from Workbench as if we are executing an HTTP request or like a web service. So we'll see together how this will work. And the last one is also as well Apex. And that's, I added, it's mainly because the documentation has it, that we can call it from an Apex. Again, you should think about it as it's simple as like it's a method in it's static method. So it, like you would be calling invocable.example and example method and passing a list for it. So it's, yes, doable from another Apex. To be honest, I never been in a position where I needed to do that. If, for me at least, if I need the same logic to be called twice through an invocable method and somewhere else, I would do this logic in a utility or a helper, and both will call it, rather than calling it through the invocable method class itself. But it's a preference, and the documentation is saying it can be done there. So those are the areas where we can call invocable methods. We won't do the Apex. It's as calling a regular method. The rest we'll see it towards the end of the series of invocable methods. We'll try to execute one of our REST invocable methods from the workbench. I found that very interesting. I didn't know that we can do that. Today and next session, we'll learn more about the flow and how we use it, and some tricks on how to set the parameter input and output for the invocable method. So the focus is not about the flow itself. It's about still the invocable method and do's and don't do's and best way to do things. And we'll go for the summer break and we'll come back for the prompt template and Agentforce actions. In general, as we said, like we'll start together learning about how to use the invocable method in flows. But first, like when would we need an invocable method in flows? First of all, for complex logic and heavy calculations, flows now is not as limited as before. It can do more and it's more advanced than before. So things that maybe in the past we used to do it in Invocable Method, maybe it's not the right place for it now anymore because flows are more advanced. But again, you still have to balance. Yes, the flow can do things for you that it wasn't used to be done through flows in the past. But sometimes your requirement is too much, or it's too complex, or it require a lot of if and else, or switch cases, or heavy calculation. And yes, you can do still all of that through the flow, but maybe the flow will get bigger and bigger, and the logic is hard to trace and hard to understand. Sometimes it's a decision within your team, and tech lead or developer lead, the architect will say, okay, this is getting too much, or this, I can expect that the requirements won't as simple as that and it will expand in the future. So let's move this piece in invocable method and call it from the flow. So that's one way. Still, things can be done through flow, but it can be a decision within the requirement that it will be too much to be done through the flow. Second part is large data volume or bulk processing. We learned together in the asynchronous, the batch, and how the batch can process a lot of records. And there was a question in one of the sessions, I believe in the Arabic session for the batch, someone was asking like, can't we do the same in a flow, like handle and process like bulk, and or to execute a batch job directly from a flow? And the answer is no, like you cannot execute a batch job from the flow directly. You would need to have an invocable method to be called from the flow, and the invocable method do the bulk processing for you. So again, it's limitation for flow and flexibility, or like more capabilities for the batch processing in Apex. So you can use it, execute the batch from the flow, but you have invocable method in between. Next is integration, external integration, and that's the HTTP callout. In the past, that was a very like common example we give, like you need HTTP callout, then okay, go ahead and do invocable method. Now the flow is more advanced. It can do external HTTP callout, but again, sometimes you need to do complex like preparation for the body before passing, or sometimes even the JSON that is coming, you need to like remove things from it, rename values because there is reserved words as the keys of the JSON, or the JSON that is coming back is too complex, or it's not returning JSON, XML, or it's not a REST API, it's SOAP. So there may be cases as well that it's better to move it to invocable method and do it. And another use case that is very common, you may have already in your code HTTP callout and callout classes that handle your external API calls, and you don't want to duplicate this effort in the flow again. Like you have something up and running and you have been using it already in other functionality or other areas of your application, and you want to reuse it in the flow. In that case, you can have an invocable method using the same callout service you have in place instead of starting something else, and that makes it easier to maintain. So sometimes as well, even though the flow can do something, if you find the same logic can be used through the flow in a batch or another LWC component or anything encoding, and you cannot rely on the flow to only have this logic, and you will start repeating things in two places. That means it's better to move this logic in an invocable method or utility method in flow, like hit it with an invocable method, and the other LWC or other like use case you have in the org or your project can use the same utility. And that's cover the reusability of Apex logic, because sometimes, as I said, like you can have calculation, you can have checks, you can have HTTP anything, you can have it, but you don't want to have, and you heard me saying it before, like if you find yourself repeating the same thing more than once, that means something is wrong and something can be reused and you didn't reuse it or wrote it in the right way to be reused. The same, if you find yourself have something in Apex and you're repeating the same thing exactly in Flow, and you have it in Apex because LWC needed or Apex batch job needed or something, that means this piece of code has to move to be reusable across both the Flow and Apex to avoid repetitive code and harder maintenance for you in the future. So that explained in general. And again, it's a case by case based on requirement, whether you go fully custom or you go with flows, for example, and mix it with invocable method. It's more something you learn with experience and leaning on, for example, someone more senior, or you go with a question to a senior person. I'm thinking this can be done with invocable instead of starting from scratch or vice versa and have this discussion. But at least you know overall some use cases when would you need invocable method for flows. So let's see an example now, like we explained together what is invocable method, when we would need it, where we would use it, and also we explain some use cases generic when a flow can use it. Let's dig deeper in an example. I will be creating, or I created before the session. Let me show you on the case object, and it would be easy for you to add this. You can have a field called category. You can have the category, whether like pick list. In my case, like I decided to make it easier for me and make it as a text just for the purpose of the demo. So what we want to do is we want to have to fill this case category automatically for us when a case is created. And when the case is created and we want it to happen without user intervention, that means we will need record trigger flow. And we want to showcase that we can pass the ID or the details of the case to the Apex, and the Apex return for me what value I should have in my category. And the logic will be very simple. I'm not demonstrating a very complex scenario or very complex calculation because the purpose is we know when to use it, but we want to know the how now. So I don't want to overwhelm you with very complex scenario. So the scenario we'll have is, for example, if you say, I need help with my billing. If there is the word billing, we want to assign category billing in my case category. Another one, like if you say, I cannot log into my account or I forgot my password, then the category is authentication. If you have a general question, we want to have the category general. If the subject is left empty, so we want it to be uncategorized, for example. So that's in general what we want to do and demonstrated now during the session. So if you, like, I will put the flow for you and I will put the code. The only thing you would need to create is category on your case if you want to try it. So that's the first step. The second step we said we'll create a flow. And again, I'll be touching base like on the steps to create the flow together, but rely on Yalla Salesforce and Basim explaining the flows because he is spending many sessions explaining detailed details about the flows and how to use them. So here we are taking your knowledge and adding on top of it using Apex. Um, and let's also, before doing that, like think together. Like I will have a flow, a record trigger flow, and we want to be able to pass to this flow the ID of the case, and after it gets created, and we inspect the subject, and based on the subject, we return the category. So let's create, I changed my mind. Let's create first this class and this invocable method together first. So first of all, for the class naming, it's really up to you how to name it. I would suggest to always start like verb, noun, phrase, and action. Like action to make it clear as a suffix that it will be an action in a flow, action in a prompt template or Agentforce action. But again, it's up to you. So here, for example, I name it assign case category action to make sure the naming convention is clear, to know that this most probably have an invocable method. Next, we said it's a public static. So we'll create a public static method. And we can name it, for example, assign category. And here we have to think about like what input I would be passing. The input I want to pass is ID, the ID of the case, right? In Invocable Method, and I will show you using a demo today why we need to do that. And specifically because of the record trigger flow. Record trigger flows when you create a record or insert, for example, a case, it will return, it's only one record. But the same as triggers, you can insert one case and you can bulk insert cases, 2 cases inserted together, 3, or load 10 cases together. If we have more than one, the trigger will have an interview, or the flow will have one flow per record. We name it interview. But Salesforce, when it comes to calling invocable method, will collect all of that and send them together. The same as when we do the trigger. The trigger, if you remember when we were talking about it, we use trigger.new. Why? Because trigger.new has all the records that are just inserted. And Salesforce does this in the background for us. The same, when we want to pass ID, we have to think about what if the user inserted more than one record and Salesforce is bulkifying this for me in the background. So in that case, we'll be passing a list and not an ID. Even though we'll be passing one, I'm passing it as a list to support the bulkification of the trigger. So let's pass it, name it case IDs. So that's the input. The output, again, what's the output? The output is one string, right? We want to return, is it billing? Is it general? Is it uncategorized? And so on. But that's for one case. What if Salesforce, I inserted 3 cases together, Salesforce bulkified that and sent me 3 IDs? I should return to Salesforce 3 strings. So that's why, like, if I want to return a string, I will make it list of string. And those lists are added to support the bulkification that Salesforce does for us in the background. So I will do here list of string. Okay. So here we prepared the input and we prepared the output. But always think about one. You want one to accept ID, then convert it to a list of IDs. You want one to accept a string, then pass a list of string. If you want one to accept one run to accept a list, you have to pass something else. This we'll learn more about it next time. But here for today, think as simple as we are adding this list because of the bulkification of the record trigger. And because Salesforce will collect multiple IDs when we insert multiple cases and pass them as one. And we can do here a system.debug statement that show us like how many IDs were passed. So far, I can even deploy, and it's a regular class. Like so far we didn't, okay, here, I should return a string, a list of string. So let me create the list. I will name it list of categories because that's what we will return. And I will say here, return like that. And I can deploy. But we forgot something very important. It's not, if I go to my flow now, we cannot see the assigned category. Why? Because we didn't have the invocable flag. So I have to pass what's the invocable flag for it, and the annotation invocable method. And part of the invocable method, we can give it a label. So it's easy, like when you search for it, you find it, what's the category. And that's where we'll see it when we add an action on the flow. I will show it to you, and then we give it a description. So now here, we didn't do any logic, but we did only the skeleton for us. Now let's think about the logic. The logic is we want to get all the cases details. So let's do that together. I'll create a map where we'll keep like the ID will be the case record ID, and the details for it will have the subject. Like here, I have the case record. If I want subject, more detailed stores, everything, I can pass it. So here we did a select statement, and you will notice this is through the constructor, like as if the constructor, if we are doing a method, so Salesforce will convert the result. The ID by default will be the key for your map, and the value is the case. If someone is confused about this, you could have done this instead. ID case, map cases, and you can have here new map ID and case, and have it as empty, and then you can for loop on case object, and you do your so-call, and you could have map cases dot put, and have case object dot ID and case object. So you can do either that or this. So that's a replacement. Like instead of doing it in those lines, you can do it in one line. It does the same for you at the end. Okay, now we have got the cases and their subjects. We want to inspect one by one. So what I do is I will add a private method here to work on each of them and figure out the category we want to return. And what we'll do here is that we'll loop through them and add the category we want. So I will loop through the cases we just got. I will do map cases that get the case ID. So we are looping through the IDs for them. And then one by one, we are calling the case get category ID. And this one is if else statement checking that the subject is not empty. If it's empty, it's uncategorized. If it's not empty, then we are checking if it's billing or technical, or if it's login or password is authentication, else it's general. It's a simple logic. You could have more like complexity to it, but here we want it to be simple. So that's why we chose this example. So let's save this. It's saved. Now it's ready. Let's go and see it in action from the flow. I'll create a new flow, and I wanted record trigger flow. And I would say it's on case object. I wanted when the record is created. Again, this is the requirement we said we'll work on it. You can leave no action, or if you want to have, yeah, let's leave it no, or let's think like if the user created with the specific category, we don't want to override it. So let's make a condition that category is none. So I want it to run only if the user, because I don't want to override. And it will be here and after record saved because we want to have an action. After that, let's create an element, the element will be an action. And this is where the category will help you. I have here case. If I go here and click on it, you have other actions that user, like, we didn't create it, like quick action. It's not me, but you'll find one that is Apex assign category, case category. And again, you can have in the description, like here, assign category based on the subject. So it will be the description. You can have it when you hover on the help, and you have the label here, and the category is where it will be like accessible. So again, it's preference whether you put it on the object or you want to have custom action category and you put it there. So it's a preference how you want to do it. Now I will give it a name. We can choose, for example, assign category action, assign case category. And as here, it shows the name of the parameter that we put. I would say what I want to pass. Like, we will be passing the triggering case, and we want the record ID. Case ID. Here we go. So we have now defined that the input is the case ID. And you notice, like, here we didn't say I'm passing multiple cases, IDs. I'm just working on the record that triggered the flow, and I'm passing the ID of the record that triggered the flow. And that's why I'm saying here, when you think about this, think as if you are passing a single ID. We are putting just the list because of the bulkification that Salesforce will do for us in the background. But you have to work with this in mind that it's a single, like each call will be passing a single value, a single ID. And that's where, like, when you are assigning this and giving you a single ID. And let's do, I will leave the output as is, and I will put here update triggering record, update case category. And I will use here the record that triggered the flow. And I put here category that we want to update the category based on the value that is coming from assigned category. Okay. So the value that is coming back from this one. And again, we are returning, yes, a list, but in real life, you have to think about it as if you are returning one string. The list is again because Salesforce will handle the bulkification for us. So that's why we have the return as a list, but it's actually, we are returning as if one for each trigger, for each flow. But because Salesforce, when we will try now to create a case, will pass one ID. If we create 3 cases, it will pass multiple ones. So let's try it. Here, I will now think again, like we did that we wanted on creation. We called Apex invocation, invocable method. We updated based on the value, the case category of the record, and that's it. Let's save the flow. I will here case case after insert Thursday, because I'll be creating one tomorrow for the Arabic. So I'll create this, and let's activate it too. And I will open the developer console for you so you can see the logs. And I will create only one from the UI and show you. So here, and I want cases, and let's create new one. And I can have here anything. Let's say here, I forgot my password. Okay. So let's save, and password is part of the authentication. So the category got assigned to authentication. So the flow got executed, and let's see here. You'll see that it passed only one ID because we created only one. and it got the logic for the invocable method. We found the category and we returned the string and we used it. Let's try to see how it will work on multiple. So let's here Thursday. That's Thursday. I will do one for billing and one login password, and we'll try to insert them. And let's execute it. If I open here the debug log, you'll see now I created the two together, and that's why it will behave as if when we were working with triggers, the trigger.new will have the two records. Same here. Salesforce will detect that it's used, like we are inserting multiple records in the same transaction. Even though the flow will run one interview per record, Salesforce will go before calling the invocable method, collect the IDs, and call it only once with multiple IDs. And that's why, even though I need, or within the flow, we passed only one ID, we had to add the list because of the bulkification that Salesforce is doing for me. And let's see here. Let me show you the case that got created. And I open this one and this one. One for the password here, password, login, and password is authentication. So the case category got created correctly. And one for the billing, I have billing issue, so got created correctly with the category. There is a very important thing I want to show you. So I will do an issue, like you need to know that the returned list, the order of the strings that are going back needs to match like the order the IDs came in. Like the first ID was billing, so when we add to the category, we add the value of the case category of the billing first. Let me show you why the order matters, and I will add here on purpose a method called reverse. I'll be sort like reversing the list, like having the first one is the last one, vice versa. So, and this is only just to mess up the result and show you why the order is important. So I put here, before returning the category, I will call the reverse. So, and I will save it and we'll try it again. I would just want to show you how this will make a difference or can make an issue in the result. Let's go here. And here I would do 2 and 2. And let's try it. So again, it will run, will pass 2, and will like update 2 records. Let's see how this worked. The login and the billing. So here, this is a login password because I reversed and I made the result of the second one to be returned the first. The trigger, like, or the flow, assign billing to the login. And for the login or the billing issue, it became authentication because we switch order. So it's very important. And I have this just to showcase for you the error or the issue. It's not for you to do it, but it's very important to keep in mind that the return list has to follow or respect the order of the input that came for you, because Salesforce will take the first one, will give it to the first interview or the first flow for the first record, the second one for the second ID, second flow. So if you mess the order, the result will be invalid for you. So it's very important to know that. So that cover like how we can build our authentic, like our invocable method, and how we can pass an input, and how we change the input from a single ID to a list and why, and how the result and the order of the result matters to, and it's very important to make sure it match the order of the IDs that came back when you are returning them. We don't have for the line of invocable method, it's just a tag annotation, like even with when we had future methods, we don't put a semicolon at the end. Like the question was why we didn't add here a semicolon to end the line. It's a special annotation, and that's why the lines start with an add. It's same, for example, when we're doing add future. It's annotation, special annotation. Even sometimes people put it on the same line of the future. So like it's not treated as a separate line of code or instruction. It's more like to indicate that this is a special type of method. Some people put it on the same line. I like to put it on separate. So you don't need to put a semicolon. It's known for Salesforce when they compile the code that this is to indicate a special type of methods. So I believe people will have to jump off for another, like for meetings and working day. So we'll keep it next time. So for today, that was a lot of information. It's simple, but there is a lot of details we need to learn about, and we want to show it. So we learned about what is invocable method, why it's important, where we can call it from. We started like the first one in Sew Together, why we have always to pass, and why Salesforce is putting the rule of always passing one input and why in the form of a list. And we did our first record trigger based flow, and we saw together how we do the invocable method. Next time we'll start here. We'll do unit testing. It should be quick. For the invocable method we did, it's as normal as any method and how we rated unit testing. And you can try to write your own, and you can have it as a homework. And next time we do a quick review for it. And next time, what we'll focus on is what if we want to go beyond passing a single ID? What if I want to pass a list of string? So we'll be building, if anyone is interested, we'll be building something like that. We'll be building this one. This is a screen flow where I can enter multiple countries. And when we click next, we call an invocable method to do an HTTP request and returns the details, and we show it in this table. All of it is screen flow. We didn't do any LWC. We just invoked an invocable method to do the HTTP request because we have this as a utility method used somewhere else already, so no need to rewrite it. And the JSON coming back needs to be fixed before being used. So we have this already in Apex, so we used it through the flow. So we'll talk about this and how we can pass a list of strings and the best or recommended way to do it. And we'll build this flow, but the focus will be on invocable methods. So refresh your memory about flows and how to work with it. I hope this session was useful and that you learned something new. Send me any questions, any use cases, anything you want to learn about invocable methods or beyond invocable methods so we can incorporate it soon in the session. And thank you so much for watching. If it was useful, please like and subscribe to the channel, spread the word, share the video with others, and I will see you next Thursday, last Thursday before our summer break. And I hope it was a good session for you and you learned something new. I learned as well a lot while preparing for the session. So thank you so much, and I will see you next Thursday.